Hey everybody, it's Ben Ash from Sam Ash Music, and we have another awesome live stream interview for you today, thanks to our friends from Epiphone. This gentleman is quite the talented guitar player. He's been on the scene for about a decade, technically. He got arguably famous due to a very popular viral video, and since then has shared the stage with some of the biggest rock legends of all time, some of which were all on the same stage at one point. So we'll get more into that. But let me introduce the man with not one, but two signature Epiphone guitars, one of which just came out yesterday. Let me introduce you to Jared James Nichols. What's up, dude?
Brother, how are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's great to have you. And I'm excited to get to talking about the guitar, a little bit about you for those that have no idea who you are. Yeah. Heaven forbid. But here, let's pull this back a bit. There we go. All right, so I'm super psyched. This is going to be one heck of an interview because I've got some questions about the guitar. I've got questions about you. And if someone in the chat has a great question, I'm happy to ask. So feel free. We've got an hour together, whether you like it or not. I'm sorry. It's going to just have to happen.
Yes.
So let's get started. So my first question is, first of all, let's talk about just where you came from. So you were, at least to me, the world knew you because there was an Uproxx interview brought to them by Honda, where they basically did this little profile of you as a guitarist from Wisconsin, with you, your dad, your girlfriend at the time, who I believe is still your girlfriend, Amanda.
Yes, my fiance.
And your puppy, Opie.
Still and my puppy.
So if you haven't watched the video, we're going to put the link below so you can get some context. But it's a fascinating story about how you essentially just went for a guitar contest. And lo and behold, you're now, like I said, you're playing the stages with everybody and anybody. So first question is, how did that video catapult you to where you are now, at least to some degree?
Yeah, so that was a crazy time. So I'm going to give you the quick paraphrase. I grew up in Wisconsin. I started playing the guitar at 15. I fell in love, like most people that are probably watching this, fell in love hard. I was obsessed with the blues and rock. And I knew from the moment I first stepped on stage, that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So when I got enough money saved up after high school, I said, I'm moving out to California. Like many do. I'm moving to California to pursue my dream of playing rock and roll. I wanted to start my own band or join a band. I just needed to get out of Wisconsin and try it and try and make a career. So when I got to Los Angeles, I entered this guitar contest, and it was called the Les Paul Tribute. And I didn't have anything to do. So I entered this contest, and I end up winning it. And I won a brand new Les Paul Gold Top from Gibson, year supply of strings, a featuring Guitar Player magazine, and all of this like kind of cool stuff. And I'd only been in LA for about 2 weeks. And one of the judges at the contest was a guy named Phil. And Phil owned a studio in Los Angeles. And he said, why don't you get some guys? You can come over. You can rehearse at my studio for free. And that was the formation. I didn't even know it was happening, of me as a solo artist, me figuring out like, okay, I'm setting up some roots here and I'm setting up some real ties to start a career. So it was an amazing experience. And now fast forwarding, because I'll talk about this forever, is in 2014, I was approached by a man named James Reed, and he worked with Uproxx, and Honda was doing this thing where they were basically trying to highlight artists and musicians that are trying to break through. And they went to Phil, who in turn became my manager, and said, hey, do you know anyone that has a cool story that's really trying to make it in the music industry? And he said, look no further than Jared. So I met with the guys at Uproxx and some people at Honda, and I kind of told them my background and my story, what I'm trying to do, where I'm trying to go with the music and a career. And they decided that they were going to follow me around for like 2 weeks with cameras. I mean, we went everywhere. They followed me to rehearsal back and forth every day, cooking lunch, talking about everything. Even at one point, like my dad came out for a visit, and they interviewed my dad and my girlfriend, who's now my fiance, and all this stuff. And it was this really cool story. I suggest anyone to watch it, but it had this really cool lead up, and we were playing these shows at South by Southwest in Texas, and no one was showing up, you know, playing like the local and the small band blues. And it was all real, and they were filming this. And then I got a call to open some shows for Leonard Skinner in arenas. And it's this awesome journey of me going from literally playing for like 5 people in Austin, Texas at like noon on a Monday to playing a sold out arena show, jamming with Leonard Skinner. So all of a sudden this video goes up. I remember it was April 4th, it was February 4th, 2016. And I remember the video goes up, in the first hour, I look and I refresh it, and it had about 60,000 views. And I was like, what? Really? So that I thought that was so crazy. And then I refresh it an hour later, and it's got 200,000 views. The video kept growing. In my socials, I remember on Facebook and Instagram, I was getting all these followers and all these comments and everything. And I thought to myself, I'd always heard about like viral videos, and I thought, is this really happening to me right now? I couldn't believe it. So that video racked up about, on Facebook, I think it was about 7 million views, and it got a ton more on YouTube and everything. But what ended up happening was I was getting all this support that I never knew I was going to get. And it was a beautiful thing. I remember the next day, the guitar player, Zach Wilde from Ozzy Osbourne and Black Label Society, literally called me on the phone. He got my number. His manager reached out to mine. He got my number, and he said, hey man, this is Zach Wilde. I saw that video of you playing. I think it was awesome. Would you like to open up a world tour for me? So then 2 months later, I found myself on about a 4-month world tour supporting Zach Wilde all across the world. And it was crazy because that video, people would come up to me and say, hey man, I saw you in that video. And it still happens now. Like, oh, I remember seeing you in the video, you know, and like, it was a really cool story. And it was something that I didn't think would have such a big impact, but in turn catapulted me into getting a start at touring and getting my feet wet. You know, it was an amazing experience, and I'm eternally grateful for that. So I suggest anyone to watch that.
Yeah, we're going to have the video at the bottom of this interview after we are wrapped up. It's nuts. I mean, it's kind of crazy. It's like a tiny mini documentary of like the movie Rockstar almost. It's one of those things.
Yeah.
Surprised it hasn't won awards based on it was very well produced and very fascinating, but pretty amazing that even before you got the call from Zach Wilde, you're already opening up for Leonard Skinner. But we're going to get into all the amazing things you've done since then. But we're here also because we got to talk about what's in your hand. That ain't no regular gold top. That's your gold top.
This is mine, baby.
So that is officially, and forgive me if I get any of this wrong, but it's the Epiphone Jared James Nichols Gold Glory Les Paul Custom. I say gold with quotes because if anyone's familiar with the original, it's the Old Glory, because that was the nickname of the Gibson you were using, and they made the Epiphone model.
Yes,
so
exactly.
So before we dive into the Gold Glory, because some people may not have even known yet, the Old Glory. So what I'm curious to know is, here you are now arguably mainstream because of one simple YouTube video. So I'm sure at some point Gibson and Epiphone starts knocking on your door, either from seeing you play or open for Zach Wilde, different Z, Zach Wilde. And there's a ZZ Top thing. The reason there's a Freudian slip there. So you have Zach Wilde and Leonard Skinner. Did you approach them vice versa? And not only was it I'm curious of the development of making the Old Glory, but what was it that Epiphone and Gibson decided, you know what, let's work again with Jared. This time we're going to change things up a bit. And I also want to know what the subtle differences are to having one over the other.
Sure. So really, I'm like everyone that's probably watching this. I'm just a fan of the brand. I'm a fan of Epiphone. I'm a fan of Gibson. I always have been, and I've always loved Les Pauls. So my original Old Glory was based on a Gibson I was already playing. And now, if anyone doesn't know, I don't use a guitar pick when I play. So I have this kind of weird style where I pick with my fingers. And I'll do some playing here in a little bit. But I remember I had a Les Paul Custom, and this neck pickup was in my way. I got rid of it. So I pulled it out, like literally unscrewed it, pulled it out, pulled the toggle switch, pulled the neck pickup volume and tone out, and I was left with a bridge pickup, my bridge, and a volume and tone.
I was actually going to say, one of my questions was, because I've seen you play for years now, why don't you have a neck pickup? And I thought it was a tone thing, but it's clearly just, it was in the way and you weren't using it anyway. That's the simplest explanation I could. And by the way, I don't mean to interrupt, but
you're good.
Just to add more to the whole finger picking thing, for those that aren't guitar players, most guitar players, like very huge percentage of them, use picks. It's just kind of like you get your first guitar, chances are you get your first pick, unless you're playing finger style or something like that. Yeah. There's maybe a list shorter than the McDonald's menu of who plays without a pick, and it's Jared, Mark Knopfler, Jeff Beck, and like still a small handful of others that don't use a pick. So, I mean, you must have, because if you watch the video that we were talking about before, there's even a scene where he's decimating his fingers and just putting crazy glue on it. So I'm surprised you don't have that as a sponsorship with either Gorilla Glue or Crazy Glue or something like that. But if they're watching, he's your guy. They will sell more to guitar players but granted, we might lose some business because now we won't be selling guitar picks thanks to you. But jokes aside, continue on with this guitar. So you have Old Glory, no neck pickup. You take away some knobs and pots at that in that respect. Continue. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Thank you. So literally, people were starting to see me with this guitar, and they saw this holy guitar with parts missing. And I remember even a few pretty famous guitar players came up to me one time at a rehearsal room, and they're like, "What happened to your guitar? Like, what happened to it?" And I was like, "Oh man, this is, the way I play." And what was happening was, yes, this neck pickup was in my way, but I was starting to fall in love with the sound of a single P90 pickup. And like having such a simplistic design, it forced me to like create all the tones on my own, which was a really cool thing because I was so used to playing, Les Paul Custom with either 3 pickups and a Bigsby. There was so many options. And when I was limiting myself to something so simple, 1 pickup, volume, tone, and just taking the physicality and actually creating the sounds, that's when I felt like I really started, like I was onto something. So people were starting to see this guy, me, and with this guitar, and they're like, what is going on? And a few guitar players were asking, man, do they make a guitar like that? And the answer was, no, they weren't making a specific one that was kind of like bass like this. And I started borrowing, I was starting to tour. So I was borrowing guitars from Epiphone and Gibson. Basically, while I go on tour, they'd borrow me a guitar if I went to Germany or the UK. And I was forming this relationship, and they were starting to see that I had this kind of special symbiotic bond with this single pickup Old Glory guitar. And I will never forget the day the guitar was building a life of its own, and people were associating me with that guitar. It's like, oh yeah, that guy, the single pickup, no pick guy. And
so like a signature guitar, if you will.
Hello. And I remember my friend Beth at Gibson and Epiphone, she literally said, it was the beginning of 2018. I'll never forget. I was in the office just hanging out. And I remember she walks right up to me and she goes, okay, Old Glory, we got to do it. We got to do it. And I was like, what? And she goes, Epiphone signature, we'll do a limited run. We got to make that your signature guitar. And like everyone that plays guitar from when they were a little kid, all of a sudden I was like, you're kidding. Like I never dreamed that far. And the fact that like we were going to make it happen was a dream come true. So it debuted. And I think, Ben, that's when we first met, right? Was at the NAMM show.
I remember I think it was Wednesday. And because the show opens Thursday traditionally.
Yes.
And the booth was empty. And here I see you look like basically Thor before he got the crew cut. And I'm like, okay, I know that's Jared. So I walk up to you, no shame. I'm just like, hey man, big fan of your work. You're great. And we start talking about guitars. We start talking about, because that was the year the Epiphone came out.
Yes.
So there was like I remember it was on the table. I probably have the picture somewhere because I always take pictures of every booth. And it was, I think, front and center in that row of Epiphone signature models they had. And it was like the premiere. And it was a hit. It was a hit that year because us guitar players like me, I don't need a lot of frills. I just want to be able to plug and play. Like my dad's favorite guitar of all time will always be Les Paul Jr. with a P90 a la Leslie West. I mean, he's a Long Island guy, so that's probably part and parcel to why my dad fell in love with the guitar itself, but the pickup is a different story altogether. But yeah, so that was the first time we met, and I think if I might have been the first, if I can do this, one of the first industry people you may have met at outside of Epiphone, I should say.
It's true. No, and you came up to me like I'd known you my whole life. So now we have a friendship because of that, because you were like, hey man, I'm Ben. And I was like, okay. And you were like, oh yeah, Ben Ash, Sam Ash, and all this stuff. And I said to you, I was like, really? Sam Ash? That's amazing. And me being a fan of the store and of the legacy of Sam Ash, I was like, this is so cool. So we instantly hit it off. And you were one of the first supporters of that right away. So
yeah, and we sold those guitars. People wanted them, and I'm sure the same thing is going to be about the Gold Glory, and we're going to show in a bit that we have these on site. But let's talk about, okay, so now we know this is how you get your first guitar.
Yep.
How did you, oh, excuse me, that really peaked for some reason on the mic. I'm sorry. This is a very sensitive mic, at least with my settings. So let me maybe step back or something like that. In any case, so now you have a very successful signature model. What makes Epiphone go, okay, let's mix it up. We're going to do a different paint job, maybe a few little different things. So what happened to change things up?
So literally, I would say from the time Old Glory came out until October of 2019. So in 2019, I spent 308 days straight on the road between clinics, festivals, full-on tours. I did 27 countries. I remember I went with Old Glory in my Black Star amp, and I went everywhere from Dubai and Egypt, all over Europe, all over Canada and America. And I was just doing clinics, whether they were a full band, me and my band playing a show. I would go to the local music store, whatever. I did a ton of Sam Ashes, and it was amazing. I was showing this guitar off, and I was literally going old school grassroots, like, I'll just do it, I'll go out and I will show it to the people in real life. And I remember that it was about October of 2019, and I started to talk to my friends at Epiphone and Gibson, everyone from Al John and Richard Akers and all these people. And it was so funny because the guitar came out in January, and then I just left, and I was like on a mission for months. And then I feel like I came back and I was like out of breath, like, hey, you guys, like, people love it. And they're like, yeah, we know. So we started talking about doing literally, what are we going to do next? And I thought it was so cool because they wanted to continue with the specs of Old Glory. And I thought to myself, that's great, because the original, it was the black classic Les Paul custom vibe with the junior, kind of configuration. And an insider thing, just so if anyone's asking, they were so cool to me that they said, you could do whatever you want. Like as far as, paint, whatever, like they trusted me and let me kind of have my say in anything. So I thought it would be so cool to have a Les Paul custom, the triple pipe blinding on the sides and the back and the front, but make it a gold top, make it old school. Like I love the early vintage Les Pauls, the all gold ones. So what you're seeing is this all gold. It's a double gold satin aged finish. And
I mean, it just looks awesome. It's just a cool looking guitar.
Yeah.
Like, how do you not gravitate towards that in a store?
And the thing about it, man, is like, it's like three now. It's three Les Pauls married, gold top, custom, and the junior. And there's something striking about it to the point where like, man, when it hits the lights and when you just see it, like you said, I gravitate towards it. And quite simply, when I pick it up and I play it, and we can go over the specs and everything, it just inspires me to play. And it inspires me to want to play guitar.
I mean, that's the most important part altogether is just having a guitar that makes you want to play.
Yeah.
And especially if you're inspiring other guitar players.
And that's the thing. What's so cool about this guitar is a lot of people will see it and they'll go, oh man, one pickup, you know, it's not that, you know, you can't do a lot with it. And Ben, I have it plugged in. I just want to play a few notes. If it sounds crazy, everyone,
please play. I'm sure
sorry.
most of the people here don't want to hear either of us talk. We just happen to talk.
So
but
everyone,
please.
I just want you to know there's no pedals right now in this chain. I'm going straight into a loud tube amp, my JJN tube amp, and I'm just going to show you. I'm going to go from 10. I'll go from a scream and bring it down to a whisper and back. So check this out. So that's at 10. Now I'm blazing, but if I bring this volume back to like 2 with the tone at 10 still. And then I can start messing with the tone knob. I can get more of that classic woman tone. There's just so many options. And all I'm trying to say is this is so cool because whoever's playing it, it's really up to the user to use their imagination, their creativity to get the sounds they want. And I can play this and I can sound like me, and then I could hand it to you and you could get a completely different other tone out of it. And that's the cool part. It's so open and inspiring. Everyone's going to approach it differently.
So that's actually something I want to bring up because whenever we do these live streams, people are always like, well, it sounds, nothing against you or your guitar playing or the guitar itself, but they're always like, I'm listening to it in the stream and it doesn't sound that great. People, you're listening to him playing through some version of a microphone. It's traveling through the internet. It's coming out of your computer. It's also converting sound. It is then also trying to play out of your, I don't know if you're wearing headphones or you're using terrible speakers or not. Just give it the benefit of the doubt. I thought that sounded amazing despite it all. So if you want to take our word for it, come into a Sam Ash Music or just buy one and just trust us and know that it's going to sound great. Because, and let me do this because we've got that there and you're probably like, well, I can't really see it on my iPhone or whatever device you're using. That's okay. We got you covered because bam. What is that? We're on samash.com and it's on samash.com and it's listed. Now, mind you, we don't have them in stock because most people don't because they're still shipping them out. But you can reserve yours right now. Look at that. Epiphone limited edition, Jared James Nichols Gold Glory Les Paul custom electric guitar for only $6.99. Yeah, I know I'm doing the spiel, but honestly, got to do the spiel. And look, it says order now because when these, I'm going to be honest. Lately, we have been getting guitars coming in and they are flying out the door. I'm sure most retailers will say that, but we're serious. So if you really are even thinking about this guitar, I would get it. Worst comes to worst, you return it if the missus or the mister says we can't afford this. I would hope you don't. But I would try and get one in your hands before you realize you can't get one in your hands and have to wait God knows how long. So keep in mind, we've got killer financing deals. You could do $30 a month with Sam Ash credit card for 24 months, which is not bad for 2 years. We've got warranties. So if anything should happen to your precious baby of a guitar, we got you covered 2 to 3 years. That's up to you. And then all the little specs are right here. If you're curious, comes with a soft shell case. That ain't too shabby. And all the little details. And speaking of which, what are the subtle differences between this and the original, if you don't mind my asking?
Of course, there's actually a few differences that are really big and really small. So the first thing, construction-wise, the updated Epiphone Kalamazoo headstock, that is a total, I believe in my heart, an upgrade to this guitar. It literally is, if I can say it like a sustain way, not like Spinal Tap, it's a little straighter. The headstock is actually bigger. There's more mass to it.
That's true, yeah.
In return, man, when I play and I'm looking down it, I literally can't tell if it's an Epiphone headstock or a Gibson, but there's an extra mass to this headstock that feels really, really good. And even when I hit a chord and I come up here, the sustain, I can literally feel the whole neck is vibrating.
I was going to say, I know you're on the Epiphone payroll, so it may sound like you have to say this stuff, but seriously, for everyone that ever had something negative to say about Epiphone, this has to be based on opinions you may have had 5 years ago. If you,
Right.
and this is let alone Jared's guitars, if you pick up an Epiphone guitar now, and you could do the Pepsi challenge, you could pick up a Gibson and an Epiphone that are more or less identical. It's very hard to tell the difference nowadays. Epiphone has stepped up their game. They are becoming a name in this industry. I know people used to be like, well, Epiphone's like a not so good Gibson. That's not the case anymore. And I don't want to hear it personally. Epiphones are, in some cases, and I'm sure Gibson might even shrug and go, yeah, kind of. Epiphones can challenge some of the Gibsons that are coming out. Gibson still makes a fantastic instrument, but Epiphone has really stepped it up. So if you even think this might be a good guitar, it will exceed your expectations. I haven't even put this in my hands, but from the Epiphones I've played that have been coming out these past couple of years, it's got to be awesome.
Yeah.
Fact.
And when I play it, the simple fact, like I said, it inspires me to play. It has inspired a lot of people to play. But there's never a point when I'm playing this guitar and I'm creating and I'm so deep in the music where I say to myself, man, this sounds great and it feels great. If only it said something else on the headstock. That's never something that's crossed my mind.
No, it's honestly, and look, the greats, John Lennon played Epiphone. You're going to tell me Epiphone's not great if John Lennon played it? Epiphone's awesome. They're awesome people. They make awesome instruments. They know their artists, and they know how to get great artists. Wink, Jared.
Wink, wink.
No, yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, it's a great guitar. You know what, David? I know you're in the chat. You may be turned off by a 50s neck, but I think you might be impressed with this one. It's, again, worth trying it out. Before
David,
you make your assumptions.
Let me say, man, it's not your typical 50s neck where you would feel it and you would think to yourself, oh man, this is like a big clunky boat. There is a lot of shape to it. So, and I know that David's probably going, man, he's trying to stick up for it. But the simple fact is there is a really good shape to it. The only thing that it is really saying about a 50s neck is it's just a little bit on the thicker taper. It's not like a boat, but I think it's a neck that's very comfortable if you have big hands or small hands, and it's pretty form-fitting. So I wouldn't be completely afraid of that where it says 50s neck.
See, that's how you sell it, because it's true. And look, it's like the old Reading Rainbow thing. You don't have to take our word for it. But seriously, come into a Sam Ash Music, try these guys out, and I think you'll be impressed. I really think you will. Every time an Epiphone comes in, myself and the guitar buyer, Jason, we get giddy to play with them. And we have yet to be, and I'm not hoping for it, but we have yet to be unimpressed. We have always been impressed. Even Sammy Ash, who is the most finicky of guitar people, he'll tell JC, like James Curley, to his face about whether or not he likes a Gibson or an Epiphone. And I remember we were at the booth for Gibson and Epiphone, and he was just like, wow, this is a different company. They really have it together. So I'm sure Sammy would agree with me. And again, this is all on speculation, but if it's like anything I've played from Epiphone, I think your Gold Glory is going to feel and sound and play great. But I know you were saying there's two subtle differences. We've got, I think it's now got brushed nickel hardware as opposed to just chrome.
Yes.
Nice little detail.
It's a nice detail to the fact that when you see it in like in person, I remember when I looked at the guitar, like I was staring at it for like a half hour, right? When I pulled it out of the box, and I was like, man, it just adds that little extra touch that gives it more of like that VOS. And I don't want to say vintage vibe. It's just got that brushed classic look to it. And I love that. And it really fits with that gold, that double gold like that. It's just a really nice uniform touch.
I would say it's not intimidatingly beautiful in the sense that it's still a gorgeous guitar, but you're not like, oh, I'm afraid to scratch it. I'm afraid to play it. I just need to keep it on the wall. And it's like, this is a guitar meant to be played.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And so the brushed nickel, I'm sure, helps because it makes it feel like it's okay. You can play. Oh, Sammy's in the chat. He's like, who, me? Yes, you. Couldn't be. Then who?
You know, I have to say this too. Like, I got to debunk something, because a lot of people I've been noticing have been saying that they don't think that I actually play the Epiphones. They think that they're Gibson Customs or USAs that were built for me. These guitars, that I play and I play every day and I tour and record and do everything with, they are the exact same guitar that you will buy at Sam Ash. There is nothing about it that is different. It's a true testament that the build quality, this thing's like a hammer, man. Like I beat this thing up like crazy and it rocks. It stays in tune fantastic. This thing's taken falls. Trust me, this has not been a babied guitar and it's still swinging with the best of them. So it's a true testament to the guitar that you would buy at Sam Ash is the same thing I would feel comfortable touring the world with.
Yeah, I mean, a friend of mine, one of your fellow artists, is Matt Heffy from Trivium, and he has the option to play a Gibson 7-string, but 9 out of 10 times you will see him with his Epiphone signature on stage because he's proud to play it. Not because it's in his like contract that he has to play it, though it may be. But he even told me himself, without any other representatives, he's like, dude, I play these Epiphones because I love these Epiphones. They don't have to pay me to play this. I would play it regardless. And I clearly you feel the same way about your guitars.
Absolutely. There's something about these that to me, it goes beyond what a preconceived notion of what it should be or what brand it should be. They're great guitars and I love them and I love to make music on them. And I would be the first one to call something out if it was not up to par as far as like a quality thing where it was like, man, I can't play this. Like I can't bend this, the fretwork, anything. But like you said, Epiphone is at a level right now that is completely unrivaled to their past as far as, especially if someone picked one up 5 years ago, this is like a whole different animal.
It really is.
I am proud to play these guitars.
So, speaking of, we've talked about the P-90, we've brought up Leslie West, and it's for anyone who even knows your Wikipedia bio, they know that you are a Leslie West fanboy, however you want to, a nerd, geek, worshiper.
Yeah.
If there was a religion, you would probably be the reverend of that church. So, but clearly, I would assume you use a P-90 pickup because part and parcel to Leslie West. But this is where I'm very curious about one specific nuance, is that we all know he's like my dad, Sammy, he loves playing a Les Paul Jr. with a P-90, but I notice you play a Les Paul Custom with a P-90. What made it that, although he is your favorite guitar player, arguably, that you chose a different model body than his?
So it's a real easy thing. Like Leslie, we all know, was the mountain. He was the big man, right? And he would play this Les Paul Jr. And I remember my dad would say, you have to listen to this guitar player if you're going to listen to guitar players. And it was almost comical because he was such a large man and all of a sudden he'd have this little junior and he'd be just making that thing scream, right? So for me, I am not the smallest human. I am like 6'5", and when I play a junior, I love it, but there's something about the full body feel of like a Les Paul Custom, Les Paul Standard that I love. So this is all mahogany, but it's the feel of it and it's the body. To me, a junior is awesome because it's that single piece of mahogany, no frills, no top or anything. But I guess I'm a little more fancy. I like the contours of a Les Paul Custom, Les Paul Standard, and I like the full feeling of the body. And what I thought was really cool was whenever I play a junior, like I have a beautiful 1956 junior that I love that, it reminds me so much if Leslie were to play it, he would think it was a good one. And I love that guitar and it makes me play a certain way. But something that I noticed is when I pick up a Les Paul in this configuration body shape, there's something that makes me want to sound like me. There's a lot of things where you quote your favorite guitar players, their spirit, their essence. And I do that every day, all the time with guys like Leslie and Peter Green and Eric Clapton. But the thing about this, when I play this guitar, I try and sound like myself. And I try and take my heroes and project them in my own way through this. So this body style, it just speaks to me just a little more on a personal level than, let's say, a Les Paul Jr. body style. And I love it.
Perfect. That's how it is. It's with anything. And I know we lost Leslie West in December, and it was a tragic loss for anyone who's into some great soloing and hard rock. And unfortunately, previous to that was your own father, who was both a big influence on you. And if you, again, I know I keep bringing up the video, but if you watch the Uproxx video, it's hard not to be envious of how much your dad loved the fact that you played guitar. I think every guitar player, and thankfully I have a dad like that as well, that such a supportive figure to, like, you didn't have that story where it's like, you don't understand me, I need to play guitar. It's like your dad gushes about you, and he says that he would be excited to go to sleep because you would play him to sleep. And you were telling me prior to this, though, that your dad and Leslie had a somewhat of a friendship. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, there wasn't a friendship. What it was I remember my dad, when I was a little kid, he would play mountain. And now my dad, he's like a construction worker. He was in Vietnam, you know. But I remember when I was a kid, he would play Nantucket Sleigh Ride and the classic mountain stuff. And I would be like, who is this? Because I was used to like hearing like on classic rock, like Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd and stuff. And he'd be like, this is the band. He's like, and he would always say when he was stationed in Vietnam, he was like, this was the band that we all loved. And I remember when I play guitar, he would be like, man, try and play it more like Leslie, play like that. So it's funny, like, even though my dad didn't play guitar, he loved it so much. And he knew and he felt the underlying passion. And my dad would always tell me straight up, he'd always say, you have to play from your heart. Like, that's the only way. You know, he didn't care about anything else. And when I would play something, he could see me trying to figure it out or whatever. And his every day, just play from your heart. You know, that was his line. So I think that we had a commonality with Leslie where it was like, he loved the way he played, even though my dad didn't ever touch a guitar. It was this really cool bond over the music and over the emotion and power behind it. And I remember, like, you know, before my dad passed, like telling him that I played with Leslie and all of the things I was doing in the accolades. And he couldn't even believe it. He was just like, he couldn't believe that I'd gotten that far. And he would always tell me that. He would always say, I can't believe you've taken it this far, you know? And it's really funny because now I keep going. And now that my dad's passed, you know, obviously I honor his legacy and I do all this stuff with him always in my heart and in my mind. But what's funny is I went back for my dad's funeral at home. And as I'm driving back to Nashville from Wisconsin, my friend calls and he said, Leslie West just died. And I almost felt like I lost the second father I never had, if that makes sense. And I was just like, oh man. So now when I play, as cheesy or as weird as it is, I dedicate what I do to Leslie and my dad. And I have something coming up very soon. I have a live stream concert coming up where it's a tribute to Leslie and Mountain. And
that's cool.
It's May 8th. If anyone wants to check that out, if you go to like my Instagram or Facebook or anything, that's all on there. But I just love that music so much. And everyone knows that there's things that are so much deeper. And with that music, and I know Leslie has a whole Sam Ash connection. So like,
that goes way back with us.
Yeah. So it's just a deep connection that I'm really honored that I got to experience and have.
So yeah, I mean, if you haven't listened to Mountain or Leslie West, I'm talking to the audience.
Yeah.
You should really check out. Obviously, if you've probably watched any movie that takes place in the 70s, you've probably heard Mississippi Queen. Thank you. Wow, I can't believe I spaced on it because you said Nantucket Sleigh Ride, so that was what I was gonna say. That's an underrated gem. That's like the rock stars solo. Like if you want to learn that, and he's done it live, and it's amazing. And
crazy.
It's one of those bands that you don't realize how important they were until you listen to it. Kind of like Velvet Underground. Like rock stars know who they are, but guitar players know Mountain. And 90% of guitar players that you worship probably say, yeah, Leslie West. That's the reason I pick up a guitar. That's the reason I play. I played alongside him. I stole licks.
You have to tell everyone that something that's a very near and dear to my heart and that Leslie used is the Sam Ash Fuzzz Boxx.
Yes. So I was going to ask you about that.
It's gold.
So once upon a time, we as a company got into the guitar pedal market, and we developed amongst others, we had the Fuzzola and whatnot, but there was the Sam Ash Fuzzz Boxx, which we reissued to zero people caring, unfortunately. It was just wrong timing, but it's still a great pedal.
Love it.
And I remember you specifically heard we had them, and I was stunned because I didn't think anyone cared about this pedal that I knew. And you're like, yes, I need to know about this. So we sent him a pedal, and you've been playing with that. I don't know how often. It's not for you could lie or not. I'm just grateful that you even cared to have the pedal.
I'm telling you, it's my favorite fuzz. If I use a fuzz, I will be in the studio next week, and there will be my Sam Ash Fuzzz Boxx will be there to record.
I am so glad we are recording this video because if anyone asks, I've got this now.
Dude, I want to make that someday. Like, I always tell people about it, and no one especially knows about it. And I learned it because I was so insane with Leslie that he would use a Sam Ash Fuzzz Boxx. And when I got it, things started to make sense. And I was like, this is one of the greatest fuzzes that no one's ever heard.
It's very nuanced. And there are some good clones out there, I got to say. I won't say what they are because if we ever decide to reissue it, it'd be nice to, like, this time we might do it where the inputs and outputs make sense, and there's actually a DC 9-volt adapter. We went authentic with this thing. Let's just say that. But speaking of that, you use that. You have your guitars, obviously. You have your signature Black Star amp. What else, if anything else, adds to your tone besides your fingertips? Is there anything that if people are like trying to get the Jared James Nichols tone, how do you do it? Even if it's just like, oh, I turn down the bass or I turn up the treble or.
Well, one of the big things that I always do that is really near and dear to my heart is since I use my fingers, they're like really pillowy picks, right? So like I always add a little bit more top end and I'll take a little off the guitar. So I purposefully want my amps to be really wide open. And if I can equate it to anything, when I'm playing, it's like I'm on a dirt bike. You know what I mean? I want to be able to have the control to really rip it wide open, but also at the touch of a fingertip, I can bring it back and harness it in. So I really rely on that. As far as other pedals and things like that, like I love the Sam Ash Fuzzz Boxx. The other pedals that I have, I'm lucky enough that I own a Klon. I love that if I need a little extra dirt or something. That's a beautiful overdrive. Man, a wah-wah, I'm very simple.
So you have the silver Klon, right?
Yes.
I remember a picture of it.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was, and may I say, this was, Jared ain't no hipster. He got that before the craze suddenly happened. So he was
crazy.
like, it's great. Yeah, I remember you posted about it. I was like, wow, cool. And I thankfully got to try one out. We sold it because got to make some dough once in a while. And since like the past year, it's been like both a meme and something coveted where the price skyrocketed. And now you're sitting on one being like, I don't know. I've loved that thing for ages. So
well, what's so funny too, when I got mine from a friend, he actually, he said, I'll just give it to you for what I got it for. And it was less than $1,000. So it's so funny.
Steal.
Yeah, because all of the sudden, and he's my friend, and it's all of a sudden I'm looking online and the things like the one I have are going for $5,000 or $6,000. And I'm like, when did this happen? You know, things get crazy like that, man.
They do. And now they're saying there's going to be a Klon copy. I think Boss is making it, but I don't know if it's legit.
Wow.
I think it may have been. It was before April Fool's, but I think it was like one of those like let's see if anyone cares kind of thing.
Right.
But all right, so you use just very little for your tone, and hey, Angus Young's like a guitar and an amp, and I think that's all he does with his sound, and still one of the greatest guitar players with one of the most signature tones ever.
Man, I crave minimalism. I love, I just love like a Les Paul. I love P90s basically into a loud tube amp and just let me use my creativity and just go for it. That's what I just really love. And, growing up, I never had great gear, even like to the point where it was always like, I always felt like I was, yearning for more. So instead of getting gear, I would say, oh man, how are we going to make this tone? So that's when I started to get into like utilizing every piece of the guitar, every piece of the amp to get what I needed out of it. And I think it's something that's stuck with me all these years.
Yeah, see, I'm just the type that I use minimalism with my gear because I'm too lazy to figure out how to incorporate. Like people love those like big like all it does is reverb or delay, and it's got knobs galore. And I'm just like, I just need it to do digital delay, so I have like a simple Boss pedal. That is not an endorsement. I just happen to use it. All right, so I'm curious about you were. I remember you were slated to go on tour.
Yes.
And then all of us got thrown through a loop when suddenly the whole country shuts down in March.
Right.
Since then, granted, you came out with your solo "Throw Them to the Wolves," which I participated in that little contest you did where it's like, jam over this. And I did a little harmony, but I'll leave that where it may lay. What I'm curious, though, is with a year staying inside, was there anything you've been working on, planning? I'm very curious what you did with your time.
So like you said, I was actually overseas. I was in Spain going to Switzerland when we ended up getting the call that said, hey, you're not on tour anymore. You have to come home. And originally I thought maybe I'd be home for a week or two. I really wasn't taking the whole thing into effect of what was happening. So for me, I ended up back at home. And at that point, I hadn't really been off the road and I hadn't had free time in years. So I was used to running around and I found myself basically stuck at home. So instead of like feeling sorry for myself or having this vibe of like, oh, what am I going to do now? I channeled it into the music. I said to myself, every day I'm going to practice. And I mean practice, like not like jam out and riff out. I'm going to learn new techniques. I'm going to push myself on the instrument. I always used to joke with my friends that if I had another year to work on guitar and work on my thing, I would just love it. I would love to have that time.
It's like monkey's paw right there. It's asking you shall receive.
Yeah. So, and then I had this crazy idea. I said, every day I'm going to write a riff or a song. Like, I don't care. I'm just going to do it because I want to be able to use this time and really utilize it to the full extent. So the past year I got into songwriting to a point where it wasn't even really about the guitar a lot. It was like the guitar was my vehicle for songwriting. I was doing so many Zoom co-writes. I was on the phone with people writing music all over the world. And what's great is I ended up writing about 45 tunes. I mean, this is crazy for someone like me that's just used to touring and playing and all of that. And up until this point, I literally next week, we start the record. I'm going to be doing a whole record at Blackbird Studio here in Nashville. I'm going to be there for 2 weeks. And I'm making a whole new record. I'm releasing a single in June. I think it's going to be June 9th on Les Paul's birthday.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. I'm going to release a new single and then a record to follow. But I'm so excited because a lot of friends and a lot of people that I love, they didn't go this route with everything going on. They literally said to themselves, well, I guess now I'm just going to hang out and wait for this to be over. I really tried to channel my energy and obviously stay safe and happy and healthy and show love to everyone I love. But I took the time to say, Jared, hunker down and practice and work your butt off. So when the opportunity comes up and you can get back out on the road or you can get in the studio, you can really utilize your time. It's almost like being an athlete, man. It's like being an athlete with really long hair.
Actually, although there are now athletes who are displaying said long hair, which is
yes,
crazy.
You're right,
you're just an athlete.
Yeah. So I'm just an athlete that happens to be athletic on the guitar. But the reality is, for me, I just didn't want to stop. I was so excited and I wasn't going to stop. It didn't matter if I was at home or out on the road. It was like, I got to do this. It's inside me. I'm just going to stay as strong as I can, stay ready, stay safe and healthy, and just keep making music.
So that's awesome. And I'm really excited for the new music coming out, especially that it's on Les Paul's birthday. So you can be able to say, I'm playing my Les Paul on Les Paul's birthday.
You're one of those memes.
Music.
Les Paul.
Exactly.
On a Les Paul.
Like Exhibit. Yo, I heard you like Les Paul, so we made a song about Les Paul with a Les Paul on Les Paul. I'm just messing now. I realized I miscalculated the time, so I want to just I'm gonna be giving you like some lightning round questions.
Do it up.
Okay, so first off, fun one. If you could have a musician record on a song with you that you were making for the next album, any musician, which musician would it be? Preferably living, because then Mozart might be weird.
A living musician, yes. I would say, to be honest, Eric Clapton, or like I would love to like Paul McCartney.
There you go. Easy.
Amazing. Like, oh my gosh, that would be so amazing.
All right. So if either of you watching, should hire this guy.
Come on. Come on.
So you have shared. I'm going to leave the last one because it involves photos. But who is or are inspiration of yours that people would be surprised to learn about?
Oh, so many. First off, I'm inspired by people that are masters in completely different things. Like, I know this is really funny, but like I will listen to classical music. I will listen to anything just to hear people, especially musicians, on display playing crazy. Let me think. People that are heroes. Oh, how about it's true, but like Michael Jordan or like
sure.
Like
by the way, the documentary was incredible. If you haven't seen it,
it's amazing.
Yeah, it was great.
Also,
and I'm not a big basketball dude. Not that I have anything against the sport. It's fascinating.
Fascinating. Also, I don't know if you've seen like there's all the ESPN stuff, the 30 for 30 stuff.
Yeah, it's all great. It's just great film, documentary stuff, regardless if you like sports. But that's a good one. Yeah, I love me some MJ. What is a unique guitar tip or philosophy you can share with us?
Okay, there are no rules, and literally the guitar is complete freedom. This is one of the only. It's like a paintbrush, man. Like, that's how I can say it. Like, there's people that have preconceived notions of things you can and can't do with a guitar, but time and time again, this relies and it continues to be a driving force of creativity. So for me, when I look at this, I see an empty palette and there's no rules.
Great. Okay, so let's check out some photos. These are ones that I've taken over the past, obviously not 2020, but a little bit of 2020. So this is the first time we met. This is me holding your actual guitar. It's not even like that's the prototype. I'm holding a G chord, because when you hold a guitar and you're a guitar player, you better be playing a chord, even if it's for a photo. Here, I'm looking up. Let me just do this. Then I am an amateur photographer, but this is me just taking some quick shots. This is from the 2019 NAMM Jam, the first one you were at, displaying your brand new guitar. There's Jimmy Vivino in the background. Not bad company to be in front of. Some cool shots. I'll send you all these, I promise.
Yes.
This is what you expect at a Jared James Nichols show. He's not just standing there comatose. He's moving around. This, I'll show you a better shot, is Nancy Wilson from Heart. You're sharing the stage with Nancy Wilson. And if you look carefully, that's Kenny Aronoff in the background. And that's Daryl Jones from Rolling Stone. So already, I mean, you've been sharing the stage with this one night. You shared the stage with tons of people. This is you guys jamming against each other. This is not sponsored by Apple. There you are. There's Jeff Garland in the background from the Goldbergs and Curb Your Enthusiasm, who was hosting the event that night. So that was fun for me, at least. So there's some more shots. Still wailing.
All the wailing. Man, this makes me really, really remember that night now. I love it.
And then you doing some overhand tapping stuff. And you were moving so fast, literally the camera couldn't do this. Couldn't pick it up. Let's see what else we got. Some more wailing. This is not my photo, but this was from the following year. This was 2020, right before the pandemic happened. And you're sharing the stage with Lizzie Hale. You're sharing the stage with Billy Gibbons, Slash. This is, again, not bad company. This is a great thing for your resume. If you want to be like, oh, who have you shared the stage with? Oh, there's that guy from that band, Guns N' Roses. Have you ever heard of him? Here's a better shot with Tash Neal, forgive me if I got the mispronunciation, from London Souls. Great band, great guitarist. But the three of you, side by side. I mean, look at this. Come on, dude. This is ridiculous.
Crazy.
How many people could say I'm sharing the stage with one of the most legendary guitar players of all time and another great guitar player, and Daryl Jones from Rolling Stones and Kenny Aronoff? So yeah, those are the photos I've got. I mean, it's so crazy that you did that. But speaking of that, so again, you've now shared the stage with Billy Gibbons, Slash, Peter Frampton, Zach Wilde, Joe Bonamassa, who you just apparently were doing a video. It was premiered because you had pre-recorded, but it was on like literally an hour before this. Steve Vai, Leslie West. If you could pluck a musician out and jam with them on stage, I'm guessing it's the same one as who you record with. Would it be Eric Clapton, or would you have someone else to share the stage with?
Oh, shoot.
And this time it doesn't have to be a guitar player, keep in mind. It could just be a great musician.
I would have to do something really different. Like, I would love to play with Double Trouble, Stevie Ray Vaughan's rhythm section, things like that.
Yeah, dude, that's
or
a good call.
Billy Cox that played with Band of Gypsies. And there's so many like musicians that I think it would just be incredible to jam with them, because of course they influenced us like all of us, but they have such a unique voice. So like things like that, man, I could sit and say musicians all day. Like, oh man, it's crazy, but like, I would love to do something like that. That'd be awesome.
That's good. No, those are good choices, really. And then last but not least, I want to say, so why? Let's play salesman.
Okay.
Someone comes in, you're selling your signature guitar. They don't know it's your signature guitar, but what would you tell someone who has a bunch of Les Pauls in their collection to add this? Why should they buy it? What makes it so appealing and unique? Could be from what you said before.
Yeah, I would say that what makes this guitar so unique is the fact that although it is a Les Paul and you're familiar with the shape and everything, the configuration and the way that you'll play this guitar will be different than any other Les Paul that is out there right now. There's something about this guitar that's so simple, yet so unique and so understated that the heartbeat of it lies in a simple configuration. But if you buy this guitar, anything you put through it, it's going to sound like you. You're going to have your own unique voice with it. It looks awesome. It feels awesome. It's built it's built to play. There's nothing about this that you would ever have to worry about as far as quality of construction or anything like that. And quite simply, it's going to inspire you to make music. And I know this is the quote, one size fits all, because everyone that plays it, everyone that wears it and uses it, they're going to have their own style with it. And I think that is the coolest thing ever. For me, it's like watching, it's like making it's like my baby. But then when your baby goes out in the world and it does a million things, this thing could do anything, and it's all up to the people that are going to put their inspiration and creativity into it to do it.
That's perfect. That's it. So that being said, and well said, by the way, I want to first of all let everybody know that if you want to follow Jared, he's on Instagram. Correct me if I'm wrong, this is your name, Jared James.
Yeah, that's it.
And he's on Twitter, JJ Nichols Music.
Yep.
And most importantly, you can get this guitar now. Get it, reserve it, make it yours. So I highly recommend you guys get this in your hands. We will tell, and I also recommend getting the Jared James Nichols amp. It goes really well with it if you really put it down. And also, we do plenty of interviews. Check us out. We just did one with Emily Wolf. We're doing this one, and we're going to have more in the future, and along with other live stream content, I should say. And last but not least, is there anything you want to say before I sign us off?
I want to thank you for doing this. I want to thank everyone that tuned in, and I want to thank Sam Ash, because now my local music store is the Sam Ash here in Madison, Tennessee. So I go there all the time. It's
nice.
Awesome. And thank you, Sam Ash, for the inspiration and everything you guys do. And I'm so excited for the guitar. It's going to be amazing.
That's great. So yeah, definitely check out Jared's music on Spotify and anywhere else they're streaming music. Check him out on YouTube. If you've never heard of him, you're going to love to hear his stuff. As far as on behalf of Sam Ash Music, I do want to also say our stores are open. Our site is open. We're selling this guitar everywhere. We are practicing social distancing. We are wiping down gear before and after it's being played, including his guitar. And we're sanitizing everything and anything often. If you don't want to come into the store, that's okay. We do offer curbside assistance. Regardless of mandates or anything else, we are still asking you to wear masks. If you don't want to wear a mask, we can't allow you in the store, but we can still service you online with curbside or anything else. So all that being said, thank you guys for tuning in to listen to me chat with Jared. And yes. Jared, if you don't mind, because I'm sure, and Sammy specifically was like, let's see some right hand technique. So on behalf of Sammy and the audience, how about ripping it, and then I'll sign us off.
You got it, buddy. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Ben. Cheers, brother.
Thank you.
Cheers, everybody. Thank you.